Okay. And Caitlin, just so you know, I'm a one-person show tonight because Brenda didn't feel well. So I will be handling letting people in and out and all that sort of stuff.
There must be something going around because I was running late because I haven't been feeling well all day.
Oh gosh. So. Well, we should be doing by 6:20 today, so it shouldn't be that long, hopefully.
My kid just told me I needed to brush my hair. That's how how the day's been going. So.
Oh my gosh. All right, and Brian's gonna join us by phone in a second, so I'm gonna go ahead and let her in.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Gina. Can you hear us?
I can. I had to push so many buttons to get fully here, but I'm here.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do some housekeeping, introduce our board, and then let you introduce yourself. So first of all, welcome to our Housing and Human Services Advisory Board hearings for human services funding. Tonight is safety and justice. So agencies dealing with safety and justice are being interviewed. We are expecting another board member. He's in a meeting until 4, so it might be just a few minutes. So if someone jumps on, it's because of that. As you know, this is a public hearing and this is being recorded and hopefully will be on our City of Longmont YouTube channel at some point. I want to introduce Caitlin Abbott. She's our board chair, and Kimberly is a board member. And as usual, you'll have 50 minutes of Q&A from the board, and then if there is time left over, we will turn it over to you. I will be the timekeeper. Before we start, I will, of course, let you introduce yourself.
Just me?
Yes. Or if do you have any other guests coming that I should be aware of? Actually, that's a good question.
No, I didn't know if you wanted the others to. Yeah. Anyway, I'm happy to introduce myself. No, nobody else could join me this afternoon, and I apologize for that. We have a very busy week. We have an event tomorrow. There's a lot going on. Anyway, I'm Gina Earls. I'm the executive director at Blue Sky Bridge, and I've been here for 10 years. In like 2 weeks, it'll be 10 years. I've never done anything for 10 years. I guess I've been a mom for 10 years, but that's about it. So yeah, that's me.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer and we can get going. Any questions from the board first?
Hi, Gina. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for being here.
Of course.
So I know that generally, many of our agencies have seen, a lot of change over the past few years. What do you think going into 2023, the biggest challenge for Blue Sky Bridge will be?
Yeah, there's, I don't want to just, I know you asked for one, but I think the biggest challenge our community is facing is in the world that I work in, is that there are not enough mental health practitioners to service the need. With everything our community, our world has been through and continues to go through. I mean, at this point, we can almost like forget even the pandemic, but just everything else that's just weighing on everybody. And the intensity of the changes that have happened, it's horrific. So then you layer trauma and child sexual abuse on that, and it's tragic. So so the biggest thing we're facing is a lack of on-staff therapists, and we've always been able to rely on community therapists to fill the gap there. And we have 3 on-staff therapists, but it's not nearly enough. And so our community therapists, though, not only are they not accepting new clients, they are not even taking wait lists anymore because their wait lists are so long, there's no point in adding to their wait lists. It's a real problem. I have another one if you want to let me answer another one.
I totally understand. I don't want to hog the time if Eliberto and Kimberly have questions.
Yeah, well, I always have questions because, so Gina, I always caveat my questions that to say that the board and I review the same applications, but we look at very different things. Well, they focus on the program, your outcomes, and all that kind of important information. My job is to look at an agency and look at its finances, its governance, its strategy, etc. And I have a couple of questions. And one, and we've talked about, and I'll get to that one second. I'll start one that's a little more straightforward, and just want to check in. When I looked at your audit and I looked at your finances, it looks like there's a little bit of a small operating, not very big at all, but it's a small operating losses in 2020, like my notes, sorry, 2020 and 2021. How is the board addressing that? Or, it sounds like you're having an event, so that's part of addressing it. Just wanted to ask about what do you see to make sure that is covered.
Yeah, if you look at at our internal financials, we actually haven't had operating losses. We've had net income losses, and that has been because we do own our facility outright. And hold on, I'm just opening up my most recent financial statement so I can speak with some intelligence and make sure I'm not, because there might have been one small operating loss in 2020, and I'm just trying to remember. Oh yeah, because in 2020 we had we got the PPP funding that falls below our operating income. So in fiscal year 2021, which approximates calendar year 2020, we had an operating loss of we had an operating loss, and that's very understandable. I could go into detail if you'd like.
No, so it's based on that PPP loan.
Yeah, so the PPP loan came in below that line. So net, we actually had positive net operating income. And then in 2020, the year that just finished in March of this last year, which is our fiscal 22, but it's basically 2021, we actually had slightly positive, basically almost break even operating income, and bottom line net income, negative net income. And that's mostly because of depreciation. We have a very hefty depreciation line because we're depreciating this big asset. And at the point that we need to do sort of a new building, a major new thing, we will raise those funds for that. So I'm okay with that depreciation. It's a non-cash impact. But going forward, we are going to have operating losses, and you're going to see that for the next few years, 100%.
Okay.
I will tell you how the board's going to handle that if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. So well, first I'd like to hear, why are you projecting these operating losses? Is it due to like increased demand or increased staff pressure?
Yes, and the biggest reason is, we have to be available for a community no matter what, right? So we have to be here for whatever comes our way, at least on the crisis intervention side of what we do. So forensic interviews, family advocacy, that work when there's a concern about a child, we just need to be here and ready. So that staffing needs to remain intact. Some of our other programs, technically, we could voluntarily cut back, but it's not the right thing to do as an organization. And so our plan is for the next few years to keep we've been growing and growing and growing. At this point, we're looking at keeping our staffing and therefore our expenses relatively flat, but with retention, salary increases and all that, it's still going to be going up, just not at the same curve. So the biggest reason we're going to have operating losses for the next couple of years is because of VOCA. And I don't know how familiar you are with VOCA or that funding, but that's the Victims of Crime Act funding. It's federal funding. It does not come through the federal government, through the federal budget, but it's outside of the federal budget. But there was a big problem with that funding stream. It's about $500,000 a year for us. There was a big problem with that funding stream that they did a VOCA fix about a year ago. If you just Google VOCA fix, you can read more about it. I don't want to take all our time on it. But basically, we know our funding for the next 2 years. It's been going with us as we've grown. And now for 2023 and 2024, again, we've been at $500,000 a year for the last 2 years. Now it's going to go to $450,000, which doesn't sound like a big thing, but it's been growing with us, and now it's going boop. And we know after that, we anticipate the funding is going to be able to keep growing with us, but it got broken. The fund got broken, and the federal government had to put this big fix in place to change how the fund works. And so we're stuck for 2 years with this stunted funding stream, which is almost a quarter of our funding.
All right. So my second question, and again, we've had conversations, and more than anything, I just want to check in on how that work is going, is really around the diversity on the board. I know I totally know you all are committed to it. I all know it's a challenge, and just want to check in with you on that work.
I have very good news for you.
All right.
I have an African, I actually have not asked her yet whether she prefers to be called African-American or Black. She's a very dear friend of mine and a very important supporter of Blue Sky Bridge, who is in the process of joining our board. She's filling out the paperwork Friday. So she'll be joining our board right now. I have been begging and pleading with the same Longmont-based, actually she lives in Firestone, but she works in Longmont-based Latina prominent member of the community for a very long time, and I'm getting really close. I think I'm going to get her by this time next year.
Awesome.
And what I feel like once I get a few, I'm going to get more people, and we're going to be able to diversify more. But let me remind you, this is what I say every year. Not everybody wants to join the Blue Sky Bridge Board of Directors, and there's a reason for that. We deal with child sexual abuse, and most of the people that get close to us, that fund us in a significant way, or that want to volunteer for us, or that want to kind of get engaged in that way with us, have passion for this work for a very real reason. And what we have found with some people we've gotten very close to getting on our board is getting too close to this work can be very, very difficult. So whereas most organizations in our community do struggle with this issue, some more than others, Blue Sky Bridge struggles a lot. I know we struggle even more because of that. So, but I'm getting closer and I'm very excited.
Well, congrats. No, again,
my board.
Yeah, I understand the commitment, but I need to check in with that because I know it's a challenge.
I'm glad you asked. I'm always glad you asked, Alberto.
All right. Those are my main questions. I'm not sure, Caitlin or Kimberly, yes, go ahead.
Hi, Gina. I just had a question about the referral process and like how streamlined and consistent are those connections from law enforcement and making sure children have access to these services that are so important.
Yeah, well, we have incredible relationships with our partner agencies. We have written agreements, you know, but those are only as good as the actual relationships between the people that are underlying all of that. So we have excellent relationships with our partner agencies, and with the Longmont PD in particular. They are definitely our #1 agency. They refer the most clients to us of anybody. And so, you know, between human services and, you know, from the perspective of what you guys think about, it would be the referrals from human services and from the Longmont Police Department. And so any case that makes it to them makes it to us, if it's an appropriate case to make it to us. The problem is all those cases that don't make it to them. So we work really hard, not only with our community broadly, to ensure that everybody understands this issue, as many people as will listen to us understand this issue, and the adults know how to keep kids safe, or if the kids are not safe, what to do about it, how to report. But we also work very closely with our partners, with the Longmont PD, to train them, to educate them, from patrol officers to detectives, to new detectives, and the district attorneys and the case workers at DHHS, on all of the aspects of child sexual abuse and all of the different types of crimes impacting children, so that everybody understands what we can do to support them and how they can best serve those children and get them through into really up to Blue Sky Bridge, where they can have the safest, most comfortable environment in which to kind of go through this process. So we have a really smooth process that is, it's just kind of goes and goes and goes. So that part goes great. I just wish we could get more kids into the system.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the board?
So one of the things that you mentioned is, that federal funding stream changing, and yeah, it's hard when you're sort of like relying on that. Obviously you're having a fundraiser. Is there anything that you're looking to do to make up that funding stream, other than, I mean, you're keeping your staffing?
Yes.
That's
it's hard
with increasing demand, or sort of just like the trauma that's happening. What does that look like for you all?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't totally answering your question, but I was just looking up some numbers for a grant I had to report on, and in the last 9 months, so this calendar year compared to last calendar year, our forensic interviews are up 24%. Our Spanish forensic interviews are up 67%. Our witness to DV forensic interviews are up 85%. Medical exams are up 75%. Our crisis calls are up 27%. So yeah, remember when I was saying before, we need to be available for our community no matter what, you know, there's no question that our staffing needs to remain intact, and these amazing people, we need to keep paying them and paying them well. So I don't have a lot of wiggle room there, I don't believe, because I think it's our obligation to our community to not only offer those services, but to ensure that our community is getting educated and we can do what we can on the therapy side. But what I have done is really scraped on the expense side as much as I can. Most of our expenses as an organization are people, because that's what we do. We serve people. So there's not a lot of room I can do, but we are getting very creative. Our grant funding, private grant funding has been stronger than ever. It may double what it was last year. And so that's promising. And I think I'm in the process of writing a 5-year strategic plan. I've never done such a long one, because these next 2 years are just going to be kind of yuck, because not only from that funding stream, but the economy and still everybody's heads screwed up. I just think these next couple of years are going to be yuck. And so I want to build a real vision for the future that I can take to some folks in Boulder County who I think with the right vision in their hands might be able to step forward in a big way and actually negate those negative net income things that I'm picturing, and maybe even help us to be able to hire another therapist or two. But that's all pipe dream stuff. The reality is probably that we will still, because I've stripped out all of that stuff already and still show operating losses. So I'm planning for those losses, and yet I'm hoping that we can overcome them.
So we got about 30 seconds left. I'm not sure there's another question, or we'll just, Gina, if you want to close this out.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, I know on the board side, we're still working on it, but on the staff side, our DEIB work is really coming so far. We have, you know, the inclusivity piece and the sense of belonging at Blue Sky Bridge has never been higher. We have 7 Spanish speaking staff members now in all of our programs. It's really incredible. So we have a newly launched DEIB committee that is a broader part of the organization, not just the leadership team that's doing some incredible work with some incredible experts. I'm really proud of it. So we'll see a year from now what I can even point to as even better stuff. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thanks, Gina.
Have a good day.
You too.
I got to find the right buttons.
All right. So hopefully O'Brien will join us here in a second. He's going to join us from his car. But we have Steve Callender from Boulder, I think, who is next.
Voices for Children.
Yeah. That is who is next. And I did have a question. He uploaded the wrong board demographics, and he sent it to me earlier today, so I'll take a look at it right now. I haven't really had a chance to look at it, but I did notice that it was the wrong one he sent in. So I'll go ahead and let him in. Hey, Steve, can you hear us?
I can.
All right. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Of course.
I'm gonna do some housekeeping, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started. We try and keep to our 50 minutes so we can get everybody through the process. So, you know, this is the Human Services Funding hearings. I just want you to know that it is being recorded because technically it is a public hearing. We did not have any public today, but sometimes we do. Introduce our board. Caitlin is our chair, and Kimberly is a board member, and they'll be basically leading the questions on the programs side, and I'll be leading other agency level questions. I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay. So do that now.
Yeah, you can do that now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Steve Callender, and I have been the interim director for Boulder Voices for Children since June. The previous CEO, Jacob Harmon, left and moved out of the country with his family. And so I'm helping the organization and the board take a look at their programs and their sustainability and make recommendations on best practices and for the CASA program moving forward. So with that in mind, the CASA program is the organization's primary program right now, and CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. And basically, anytime a child is involved in a dependency and neglect hearing in the court system, 100% of those children will get a CASA volunteer that is trained and provided by Boulder Voices for Children to help children represent their best interests, to advocate for themselves, to navigate the court process. And anytime that a child is looking at being removed from a home or parental rights being terminated, no matter how bad the home situation is, that's traumatic for them. And we're there to provide support for that child through that process. We expect in the coming year about 250, we've projected that we'll provide services to 250 children in Boulder County in the 20th Judicial District. As the pandemic winds down and children are back in environments like schools where mandatory reporters are present, we expect that we'll see possibly an increase in the number of cases that the county and the courts are referring to us. But we'll see. One of the things that sort of puts a downward pressure on those number of children is the Families First Act, which is federal legislation that was passed a couple of years ago. And states and counties are just starting to kind of come to grips with what those rules and regulations of Family First means. And the quick version of that is that only termination of parental rights and removal of a child from a home is an absolute last resort. And what you'll see is the cases that do make it to court and require a CASA will be really intense if they met the threshold for beginning those proceedings. And in some sense,
I'm going to stop you there because I want to make sure that we hit our timer and give the board their 15 minutes of question and answer. But thanks for the information.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer, and we can jump and we can continue having this conversation if that's what the board wants to do. Okay. So go ahead, Kimberly.
That actually was really helpful. I did see that reference to Families First, and I wasn't sure what that meant. And I guess by extension, and I don't want to take too much time, but I'm really curious, what's the safety net for those children who are no longer being case managed in that intense way because they don't meet that criteria?
Yeah, honestly, we're all really worried about that because these are children who would have, prior to Families First, qualified for some kind of intervention, and it's a continuum. It doesn't mean that those children are being removed from the home, but it relies on, if the county's hands, if social services hands are tied in intervening with that family, there may be some falling through the cracks, and it may fall on other places where those children or families are plugged into the community to catch those. But are they going to be referred to social services and through those proper channels to sort of move them along an appropriate continuum? We're not sure, because we don't, Boulder Voices doesn't get, and CASAs don't get involved with those kids until they make it to the court system. Mm-hmm. So we don't see them up until then. And we partner with other nonprofits to try to gauge what's happening with those families. But it does sort of dim the lights on our ability to see what's happening with those families prior to being referred out through the court system.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I just had one other question. I saw that you're anticipating that post-pandemic fundraising won't meet expectations. And I'm just curious, what factors are you anticipating will lead to that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of factors there. I think that you're seeing a reorganization of funders on every level, refocusing, similar to what you saw after 2010 to 12 during the recession, in that period of time, where funders were tending to focus on emergency services and reactive services, and not so much the longer term. Bolder Voices kind of falls into that longer term proactive work with these children. And we've noticed that funders are tending to sort of move away from that. I think that also during the pandemic, we had a great amount of support. And I think that you tend to see that sort of fall off after you hit these peaks of support from individual givers. That tends to fall off for a year or two after you get such great intense support during this peak year. So we had a lot of individual donors who contributed 2 or 3 times a year. And in my experience, that tends to not maintain at those peaks. When they've gone above and beyond what they normally contribute, that tends to come down again the year after a fundraising year like that.
Thank you.
So, thanks, Steve, for sending me that agency and board demographic. You know, I always caveat my questions, say that the board looks at program level type of questions, and I look at agency level, in particular, your governance and your strategic goals and et cetera. I guess my question is, you know, when you think about, I mean, this board is very committed to diversity and inclusivity, particularly at the board level. We of course, we want to make sure that staff is culturally competent and can work with all different sorts of populations in our area. But I see that you all have one board member that's a person of color. What's the work that's happening to increase that, to ensure that, I mean, I'd love to know the ratio about, you know, what demographics you work with on the client side, and then who makes up your board, right? I think trying to meet that is super important.
Absolutely, as do I. And that was one of my first comments to the board when I came in. The board is a little bit smaller than they'd like it to be. And my recommendation to them, and one that they were on board with as well, was that when they fill these open spots to get the board up to the 12 to 14 range, that they be persons who are reflective of the communities that they're serving. And when we talk about the communities that we're serving, over 50% are people of color, primarily Latino families and children, with a much smaller proportion being African American and Asian, and then the remainder white. One of the things that I will say, so I can say that what I've seen from the board is that they're committed to doing that and to filling those spots. They've recently been working on, and I've been helping them work on a DEIJ plan for staff, board, and CASA volunteers. And I will say that the one strength that they have going for them, when you don't see that board composition reflect the population being served, is that they can meet that through their CASA volunteers. So their CASA volunteers are more reflective of the community and the population that they're serving. And so when they look at matching when they get a referral for a child and they're looking at who would be a good CASA volunteer for this person, taking in cultural competency and cultural proficiency in how the volunteer and the child and the family are going to interact together is always a consideration. So that is at least one way in the present moment that they're able to help meet that diversity element through the volunteers, through the pool of volunteers.
I had a quick question, Steve. One thing I noticed is that in prior years, one thing, obviously, you mentioned that Jacob had left the organization. In the last couple of years, Bolder Voices has also applied for funding for, I think, the family visitation program, and I don't see that. I'm curious, and I see that in the agency's strategic goals, the focus really is on providing CASAs to to children who are in that, those dependency and neglect situations. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about some of those changes at the organization level and kind of what the focus is and what's going on there.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. Really going back as far as last year and heading into this summer, the board was struggling with how to make supervised visitation and exchanges a more sustainable program from a funding perspective. And then they had some staffing challenges where during the pandemic, a lot of that work had to happen in person, and it couldn't happen in person. But then when it did happen, it was pretty staff intensive, and they were going through a lot of turnover with staff who had the clinical expertise to supervise those visitations. Some of those families were had very intense needs, programmatically speaking. And so it all sort of came to a head in June, where the program director had come and said she really was spending all of her time sort of trying to recruit and retain staff, clinical staff for this position, and she wasn't having a lot of luck. And she was having to do that work herself on top of trying to recruit and retain staff. And the trick with supervised visitation and supervised exchanges is that you need someone to supervise them. And we felt like from a risk management standpoint, it would be a lot better to pause the program in the summertime when the caseloads were the lowest throughout the year, and take a look strategically at not only how do we have staff in place to do this program, but also to make it not a financial drain on the organization's resources and threaten the work that CASA was doing, because CASA was supporting a lot of the strengthening families work. And on top of that, I think that the modeling that they did originally was around receiving a certain number of DNN referrals from Boulder County. And those DNN referrals did not materialize, especially during the pandemic. That might have been able to be changed moving forward now that things are kind of pandemic winding down. But they had received one DNN case from the county, and it was a fee-for-service model where they were only reimbursed for the families that they served. And so there was a big gap between the families that were referred to that program and what they were reimbursed for. They had to staff it like it was going to be full, and it wasn't very, very often. And so they had tried some things to take supervised visit exchanges out to a broader community. And I think with the pandemic, it just didn't really get a lot of gravity to it. And the board made the decision to pause the program with the hopes of restarting it at some point in the future. And we've had some conversations with organizations and other CASAs and other neighboring judicial districts and counties about possibly partnering to move that forward. But the funding cycles were such that we felt like we couldn't really apply with so much ambiguity with what was happening right now, with what we knew right now. And so it just felt safer to just keep requests for CASA and try to take the next year to figure out strengthening families. It absolutely is a service the community needs and one that we want to provide, but just didn't see a path to be able to get there now.
Got it. I really appreciate that level of detail on that. So, and understand. So,
yeah, thank you.
I don't have any other questions at the moment, Alberto.
Kimberly? I don't really have any other questions either at this point, Steve. So we have about a little bit less than 3.5 minutes left. If you want to spend some time sharing whatever you want to share, that is fine.
Yeah, I think that I would just say that the CASA program continues to serve 100% of the children that are referred to us through the court systems. We're starting to see the intensity of those cases kick up a notch and have a lot of complicating factors. A lot of more children, as I look at the caseloads with who would consider themselves LGBTQ or transgendered, and a lot of complications that come up from those cases because of their families or the inability to place them because of their gender identity. And really proud of the work that the CASAs have done around those and managing that, and being able to work with those children and really support them through some of these really hard sort of issues that arise during their case and while they're in with our CASAs. So really happy to see that for those kids.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for sending that. I will send that onto the board as well tomorrow.
Okay.
What you sent me today. So appreciate that.
Sure.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so we got a few minutes because our next is at 4:40. We are doing well on time, and it should be Bridge to Justice. And I think Bruce can't be here, but he had found either another staff member or board member to join us. So, and I think Brenda did check with everybody beforehand. So yeah, I just got my COVID and my flu shot, so my arms are jello right now. I got those today, but I haven't felt, for some folks, when you take that COVID, you get that fever, tiredness. I'm still doing okay so far. We'll see if I get it tomorrow, but my arms do hurt.
I'm so glad you did it. Yay.
Yeah.
We got ours just past weekend. But now, of course, we have 2 COVID cases in the house. So, Caitlin, that's why you might see me put my mask on and off because they're coming through because I can't bring them food while I'm on this call.
Understood. Yeah. I just got the phone notification. I think that I had an exposure last weekend, but we just got our flu shots over the weekend, and I'm trying to make sure everyone has. I'm like trying to figure out when the kids got theirs because I had to take them separately over the summer to get boosters because the little one freaked out when he saw the big one get a shot last year. So I was like, okay, we have to separate it now. And so now I'm like, what email address or phone number did I use to like register so I can look up their vaccine records and figure out what when.
What a good mom you are, man. That's so kind to space them out like that.
I mean, what happened was that like our younger one saw the older one because I was like, oh, you can watch it, you can see it's not that big of a deal, and it truly wasn't. And then he freaked out, and it took us 45 minutes to get his done.
Oh no.
I finally had to be like, what's coming. You're spending this long anticipating it. This is worse than it's actually going to be.
Yeah. It's actually, it's like I told my older son took it, and it's like, he's a football player, pretty athletic kid, and he tensed up, and it's like, that's the killer, man. You can't tense. You just got to relax the arm.
Yeah. I always say spaghetti arm. I used to be an immunization nurse, so I'd say spaghetti arm.
Yeah. Just
imagine that it's nice and loose.
Yeah, because that's what gets you.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, he totally flexed his muscle. It's like I could tell that he was flexing and tensing, and I'm like, dude, that's just gonna hurt even more.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got Rachel in the waiting room. I'll go ahead and admit her so we can get started with the next one. I'm hoping Brian joins us. I also hope he gets home safely. So,
I was gonna say, I hope he's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, good afternoon, Rachel. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for stepping in for Bruce because he couldn't be here. Appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping. We're trying to keep on schedule, so it will go pretty fast. So my name is Eliberto. I'm the project coordinator for community services. With me, I have Caitlin Abbott. She is our board chair, and Kimberly Strengy. She is our board member. You will have 15 minutes of Q&A time from our board. They have read your application and they will ask you questions, and I will ask questions as well. If there is time at the end, we will allow you to share whatever you want to share about the organization or the program. Before I start the timer, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Okay, wonderful. Well, my name is Rachel Dane. I'm a staff attorney at Bridge to Justice. I'm also a longtime Longmont resident. And I came on with Bruce about a year ago. Before then I operated a firm in Longmont, and then I joined forces with Bruce because I really feel passionately about Bridge to Justice. So I'm excited to be here today to kind of talk about this great organization.
All right. I am starting the timer.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for being here. One of the things that I think we probably had talked with Bruce about in the past, but the amount of services through the pandemic sort of changed in terms of with the courthouses being closed and people not going out. What have you all seen as things have reopened? How is the caseload looking as compared to say during or pre-pandemic time? What does that look like for you right now?
That's an excellent question. What we saw in our practice as family law attorneys, the pandemic didn't really decrease a lot of our work. In fact, we saw the opposite. It was a lot of people, that were forced into close quarters and sometimes dangerous situations. And a lot of people decided now is the time. I've kind of been putting it off, and now is a good time for us to address our relationships and our family situation. So our family law caseload has remained very high in demand. And a lot of the things people were litigating were very stressful, child safety issues and everything. So there was a definitely, as far as that aspect of our practice, it was pretty steady. One of the big differences we've seen is a change in the way we meet people. And so we've been doing a lot of Zoom and a lot of calls and a lot of remote work. And it actually seems to be a great thing for our clients. It removes a lot of the barriers around finding childcare and, sometimes paying for gas to come and meet with an attorney. So I think all in all, we had some major silver linings from things that kind of changed the way we practice and opened up some barriers to access. And as far as the eviction defense program, I think people were kind of expecting the eviction cases to kind of simmer down a little bit. But what our attorneys are reporting is not the case, that it's still very much, a packed courtroom and a really, really high demand for people needing some help when they're facing eviction. So,
yeah. And I know from your application that you are serving twice as many clients as previously, which is a significant increase. What does that look like for staffing for Bridge to Justice?
Yeah, so I'm a new attorney. I came on last year. So we have another attorney that kind of came back from maternity leave. We've also been implementing a lot of kind of streamlined procedures. So we have paralegals that are helping out. So our attorneys are able to have more bandwidth to help more clients while delivering the same level of representation. And as far as numbers go, those eviction defense clients are very, it's not the same as somebody who has a very complicated divorce. I can spend 100 hours on one client who has, safety issues and a lot going on in a divorce. Whereas some of the eviction people, that court process goes so quickly that it's really like you meet with the client, you address the needs, you're representing them that same day you met them in court, and things just turn over a lot faster. So that's a big part of it. The nature of the stuff we're doing, still doing a ton of that eviction defense stuff is part of the reason that, those things are going up. Those numbers are going up.
So that's actually do you mind if I jump in, Caitlin? Hold on, I'm just letting Brian in. Sorry, I'm a one-person show tonight because my partner is usually helps with this, is not feeling well. So give me 1 second.
Are you okay if I ask a question then?
Sure.
Are there plans to further increase staffing? I know when Bruce has come a couple times, there's always talk of like there's more need really than you all are able to meet, and obviously providing some really critical services for folks in our community who might not otherwise be able to afford it. So are there projections for increasing staff to provide even further support?
I think that's always a goal of the organization, because we all hate having to turn people away or refer people out. And the need is just so high. So, but at the same time, we're also very aware, especially coming through the pandemic, a lot of like legal aid nonprofits didn't survive the pandemic, like spreading ourselves thin. Like we want to ensure that the organization has staying power and is really lasting. And we want to make sure that our staffing isn't getting too burnt out, because that's a big problem with family law in general, especially also working with indigent clients and survivors of violence and all of those things. So like, I think the only thing kind of getting us, we just want to be smart about any expansions that we do in a way that's not going to spread the organization too thin. But that is definitely a goal. All of us would love to see more attorneys come on board.
And that's also, that's a great segue into my question, because so the board looks at program level. We all see the same application, but the board primarily looks at the program level information and what you put in your application. Not that I don't, but that's not my primary focus as staff. My focus is really more around your agency level questions and your budgets and your projections and things like that. And I guess my question is, when I look at your budgets, the majority, well, not the vast majority, but definitely a majority of your funding comes through your fee-for-service type of and I didn't see a whole ton of fundraising. Saw some foundation. I know you got some big grants from the city of Boulder as well through their health equity fund. And I guess I'm just wondering, as you think about expansion, is the board having any conversations about diversifying or strengthening those non-fee-for-service funding revenue sources?
Absolutely. I mean, that's definitely a goal. One of the things that we see is it's kind of nuanced to explain the need for our services, especially when we talk about family law. A lot of people are like, divorce lawyers, that's such a luxury, right? People are fighting over these, trust accounts or something like that. That's kind of a picture a lot of people have in their mind of like what family law attorneys do. So the ask of like, hey, let's bring money into the organization can be kind of hard from a fundraising standpoint, to really explain like that we're helping prevent homelessness, right? We're helping people re-enter the workforce who've been stay-at-home parents for 15 years. We're helping keep children and survivors of violence safe. I mean, that's ultimately what we're doing in the case, but kind of through this lens of like, oh, we're family law attorneys. I think that's just part of the reason that the fundraising side, but I do know that it's something that we've talked about increasing and like doing campaigns more to try to do that. I don't think any of us relish like having to charge clients, having to bill clients. I mean, I came from the private sector and $350 an hour for billable rates. So, we're still we're still offering a very important service at $125, even though some people have sticker shock for that amount. That's still a lot of money per hour to be charging. But always like our goal of everybody in the organization is to, minimize the financial impact on all of our clients. So the more opportunities that we have from external funders to do that, we jump at anytime we have an opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you very much. The other thing that I also tend to look at, and I've had these conversations with Bruce, and I know that you're working on it, but one of our important priorities as a board is to also take a look at the diversity of the boards. And I know you've made some strides. You have a person on the board, this person of color. What else? How is that work going? I mean, I think that's just an important piece.
Yeah, it's something we're definitely trying to accomplish. That is an important goal for us as well. The people that really have the bandwidth to volunteer on board positions right now, I mean, we're just hoping, we're putting our feelers out and doing everything we can, because that diversity is really important to us. But we haven't, that person isn't currently signed up with our board, we're still looking for them. So persons, I should say, because we want as much diversity, geographic and in all metrics of diversity as possible on our board.
Great, thank you. Does the board have any other questions? All right, we have a few minutes left. So let's see. We got actually about 5 minutes left. So if you have anything, Rachel, that you want to share, this is a good time to do that.
I mean, only that, you know, I'm a member of the Longmont community myself. 40% of the clients that we serve reside in Longmont. And I think that, you know, it's just really important, the work. I'm personally passionate about, you know, helping this community. So we appreciate any help you guys can give us in reaching that goal. So
actually, that brings up a question for me.
Yeah.
Because I actually was talking to a person at my office about this. So, you know, the city of Longmont, through our community neighborhood resources division, we have a mediation program, and we are very much involved in issues of eviction and eviction prevention. And I'm just wondering if you all you know, do any work with our folks in the mediation team.
I don't think so. I do know that a big part of what our attorneys do in the courtroom is settlement negotiations. So I don't know if they have that third-party mediator present with them, but I do know that they're probably working towards the exact same goal, which is sometimes, you know, do we need a few more weeks? You know, will a few more weeks to get this person, you know, on their feet before they're evicted, you know, will that make a difference? And but I'm not aware of them working directly with the mediators department at Longmont.
Okay, yeah, because our folks are at the courthouse every Friday, you know, as well, for dealing with evictions and, you know, trying to work through those processes. I was just wondering if there was any collaboration there.
Not that I'm aware of, but
okay.
you know, it's great that those resources are there for sure.
Oh yeah, they help a lot of people on a weekly basis dealing with eviction. Okay. All right. So any other last words? Okay. Then you have a good night. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you all. Have a great night.
All right. And I know, Brian, you are on your way to Longmont. Thank you for joining us, and be safe. So hold on, trying to get my timer here off since we got done.
We have a couple of minutes for the next one, right?
We do. Yeah, we got a couple minutes.
We need to do a quick check-in on the little one.
All right, that is fine. That is a good time to do that. I might go get some more water. So I'll be back, folks. I'm just gonna turn my mic off and put it. All right, we got a couple of minutes until until time starts. I think they've got both of their folks here. Give Caitlin a little bit so we can. All right, Caitlin's back. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and invite.
Eating a little, so I don't want everyone to see me chewing.
No worries. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. No worries. Just to know, good to know you're back. All right, I'm gonna let them in. Hello, Brett. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate you being here. I'm gonna do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we will get right into the hearing. So first thing to say, this is a public hearing, and it is being recorded, and will be on our City of Longmont YouTube channel at some point. And I'm going to introduce our board members. Caitlin Abbott is our board chair. Brian is a board member, and Kimberly is a board member as well. They are the ones that are evaluating your application, as am I. You will have 15 minutes of Q&A from our board and myself. And then at the end of the, if we are done before the end of those 50 minutes, you will have time to share whatever you would like to share. But before we start, I want to give you all the chance to introduce yourselves to the board, and then they can start off with questions.
Of course. Hi, I'm Brett Landis. I'm the managing attorney for Colorado Legal Services Boulder office. I've been in this position for about 6 years. I have spent probably about the last 15 years of my life doing some sort of legal services. And I am just really excited to talk about some of the updates to our office and some of the changes and the growth that we've been able to do, which my hope is that this will continue to lead to better and better client experiences for low-income residents of Boulder County and the city of Longmont.
All right, Kelly.
Hi, my name is Kelly Cuevas, and I have been working for the Boulder office of Colorado Legal Services for not quite 3 years, just a little bit shy. I am the pro bono coordinator. It is my responsibility to match attorneys with clients that are eligible for our services, to run our clinic, our pro se clinic, and to do a lot of the grant work. Outside of my experience here, I have about a 10-year history in nonprofits and like human-focused nonprofit work.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the timer, and then we will jump into questions.
Great.
Not sure if our board has any questions to start off with. Kimberly.
Hi, thanks for joining us tonight. I really only had one question. I'm curious if you've seen any changes in demand in this past year coming out of the intense pandemic phase, and change in the service areas that are being requested for assistance.
We absolutely have seen those. I think probably the biggest and most immediate changes as more and more people became vaccinated, numbers went down. We saw an increase in walk-ins and walk-in intakes to our office. That also coincided with our move from the city of Louisville to the city of Boulder. Right now, we're pretty much at Baseline and 30th. So we're right by, much more accessible by public transportation, and a lot of people have found this a lot more convenient. We've seen housing is kind of a continued area of focus for us. We've been lucky that as some of these emergencies hit, we have a Globally fellow. It's a former law student, now lawyer, who has been working with us for a little over a year, and he has really dug into these housing cases and is taking a lot, not only eviction defense, but a lot of subsidized housing work and habitability claims. So that's been a big increase, and we do expect, with a lot of the rental assistance programs associated with COVID, as those end, we're expecting to see more non-payment of rent cases come back into the court system, and people needing help either negotiating with landlords or coming to terms with a move out, or contesting bad notices and bad record keeping. So we do expect to see those. We've seen increasingly complicated family law cases. We haven't necessarily seen a huge increase in the raw number of those cases, but the cases we are seeing present with several complicating factors. You know, before the pandemic, it used to be, you know, sometimes you'd get a case with really horrible domestic violence, and sometimes you get a case with interstate child custody issues, and sometimes you'd get a case where your client has a serious disability. And nowadays, I feel like we're getting all of those things combined into one case. And that's certainly led to the cases being not just more time consuming on our end, but time consuming on the court's end. Delays are a little bit longer for those. As well as needing to be more careful in how we draft things, more conscious in our negotiation styles. So it's been certainly an exciting time to learn this area of law and do this area of law, but definitely a change from what it used to be. I think other changes, the Marshall Fire, we are seeing some after effects from that disaster. We were able to help put some kind of boots on the ground at the Disaster Assistance Center pretty early on with the Boulder County Bar Association. What we have kind of seen now that we're several months out from it, there are a number of consumer cases that have come up due to some contractor disputes, as well as some housing cases, including people who used to be homeowners or people who are newly renting in situations they wouldn't normally be renting in, and helping them navigate those. A lot of those clients are senior members of our community, and that's been a class of people that I think has been greatly in need of our services. And then I think that another change has been we started our wills project, and I'm going to let Kelly talk about that because that is her baby that she started with the Senior Center as our community partner.
So the wills project, ordinarily our office didn't do wills. It wasn't in our case priorities. Our time was spent elsewhere, but as a response to COVID, there was just such an expressed need, excuse my computer notifications. There was such an expressed need for these critical end-of-life documents. And so we've partnered with a few law firms and a few private attorneys who are providing wills to seniors, and not just seniors, but those who are vulnerable with extenuating medical circumstances. And we are able to push out about 8 wills per quarter, which might not sound like a whole lot, but it is a really incredible increase. And it's an incredible service to the community. And the work that the volunteer attorneys are doing for us is invaluable. We have a few firms where every single attorney takes a will from us. And that's an incredible level of participation that we have not seen pro bono for some time. So it's been very successful, and it's nice to fill this gap and meet this need that was in the community that we weren't meeting before.
So thank you for sharing that. I have a couple of questions. You know, what's interesting is that I feel like I know the difference between what you all do on the family law side and what Bridge to Justice does. And we just heard from them tonight too, on the family law side. I think I understand the difference. Like I've talked to Bruce about it. I guess the question I have is, because I asked them this same question, we have a mediation program through our community neighborhood resources here that also works with, work with the eviction process and trying to help with that. Is there any coordination between you all around the eviction piece, between the legal services agencies?
Certainly with mediation, Matt Forsty, who is our fellowship attorney, and myself attend meetings, which we kind of have named the Housing Retention Group, that are sort of spearheaded by the county. But Susan Spalding with City of Longmont is very involved in those meetings, as is the City of Boulder mediation folks and the eviction prevention folks for City of Boulder, and the county personal finance program. So we've been working really hard to coordinate with them. I am in the process of trying to coordinate with Bridge to Justice to organize some Know Your Rights presentations that we co-present. The planning has been a little bit slower just due to some unexpected delays, but we're hoping to get a couple of those presentations out, ideally at least one in the City of Longmont, to give tenants a little bit better background about their rights and responsibilities, especially as we're seeing the emergency rental assistance programs wrap up probably in the first quarter or second quarter of 2023. So we're wanting to help people prepare and plan ahead of time as best we can. And it may not be successful, but I think even having those accessible is going to be helpful. I think there's also an opportunity just with the technology use that people have developed over the past couple of years to have those available online and be able to share those on social media and other venues to try to reach a broader audience, or hopefully give people a chance to look at them before they find themselves in eviction court. So we'll do some coordination on prevention work. Obviously, when we cannot accept a case, Bridge Justice is one of our referrals that we'll send people to, as well as Rocky Mountain Legal Center. I think that's certainly made it helpful on those eviction court dockets. I think probably the biggest practical difference is we typically will get those cases a little bit ahead of time. So we're able to do, I think, some more complicated ones. I know one of the ones Matt did involved someone with who was a survivor of domestic violence, and her husband was being evicted for non-payment of rent from a residence that she had fled. And she was trying to prevent herself from having a bad rental history as she's trying to stabilize. And he was able to get a motion to dismiss, but that's a little bit slightly more complicated litigation strategy. There have been some reasonable accommodation cases that we've worked on with people with disabilities that, again, just require a little bit of extra time on the front end and a little bit more nuance that you don't necessarily have the luxury of doing that when you're essentially running an eviction clinic as Bridge Justice is in Boulder.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Only because I think I've seen this every year and I've always wondered about it. And I think I may have asked this before, maybe I have not. So it's always interesting to me, part of the application talks about financial reserves, right? Because in the nonprofit world, it's always important to have reserves, at least 3 months of operating reserves. Yet, Colorado Legal Service does not have reserves, but they always mention this, and I wrote this down, Legal Service Corporation. And I guess the question is, how does having that, one, what is that Legal Service Corporation? And then how does that support in times of, when you don't have reserves, when you have a rainy day? How do those work together?
Yeah, so I can talk about what the Legal Services Corporation is. That is actually a federal agency that provides a portion of our funding statewide for all 13 offices across the state. It provides about 40% of our funding. The rest being made up of local grants, statewide grants, and private donations. I believe we do have reserves.
I mean,
Have we?
That's not what your application said. It said you did not have any reserves or a reserve policy.
Kelly, I'll let you answer that part.
Okay. So Colorado Legal Services, the organization, has reserves. Our Boulder County office does not ordinarily operate with reserves. And the budget narrative that you received was written by our financial controller who operates out of the Denver office. And he is the magic man with the numbers. But the way that it was explained to me is that Colorado Legal Services, the entire organization, has reserves, and that each individual office can pull from as needed, if needed.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for explaining that. I just the application.
The budget was specific to our office. What was turned in was just specific to our office. However, future forward, if you need the program-wide budget for the whole state, that's retrievable.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I mean, it's always hard when it's a larger organization. Trying to figure out that kind of stuff is always tricky.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are my questions. I'm not sure if Caitlin or Brian, if you have other questions. We have about 2 minutes left. So if the board doesn't have any questions, we'll turn it over to Brett and Kelly, and they can share whatever they want to share.
That works for me.
Great. Well, I will be happy to talk more. No, I will just say, I think the past year brought a lot of very positive changes to our office. Slightly over a year ago, we were a staff of 3. We have now grown to a staff of 6 people, and that includes our fellowship attorney, as well as a family violence justice fund attorney and a family violence justice fund paralegal. And to see the work that all 3 of those staff members are doing is just incredible and inspiring. And to see how we can leverage our services is really impressive. I am personally really looking forward to having a little bit more time and bandwidth to engage in a lot more outreach to vulnerable populations. And to continue our efforts working with community partners. I'm really hoping to have some great opportunities to do that, particularly in the city of Longmont. And anytime any of you ever want me to talk to anyone about our services, I'm happy to come and chat about it. There are also some exciting things program-wide. The Denver office and the Colorado Springs office now have some social workers working alongside attorneys and paralegals to better serve clients who are in crisis. And our hope is that as time goes on and those programs prove successful, there may be more opportunities to request social workers in other offices. And I've certainly prepared some pitches to my bosses about why Boulder would be a wonderful, wonderful county to have that in, as well as having some supportive community partners. So we are really looking forward to all of those. Again, I think our new location has created some really positive changes for clients, despite some of the inconveniences of moving. But we've already seen, again, that increase in walk-in traffic and more clients wanting to return to in-person meetings so that they can better understand their legal issues.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and have a good rest of your night.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Okay. So our next group is Focus Reentry. Just a little thing about them. I struggled where they went, and I struggled too because, what they're asking for is for homelessness services, which you typically don't fund through here. But, I think Karen and I last year decided to let them through because they're focusing on folks that are re-entering from the jail, that criminal justice service. It's not just general public people experiencing homelessness. And I did talk to Molly about that, so I let her know that's why Karen and I, when we decided to allow that application last year, and that same thing this year, even though they also have a mentoring program, which I think would be, it fits really well with the safety and justice piece. Just wanted to give you that caveat as we go into this conversation. And I have had it with Molly too, who we're gonna let in here in a second. All right. Hey, Molly.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I apologize. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, so
I think it's going around.
it is.
So Molly, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm gonna do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we're gonna jump into question and answer. So as you know, this is a public hearing and it's being recorded, and it'll be available on our City of Longmont YouTube channel. Let me introduce our board real quick. Caitlin Abbott is our chair. Brian and Kimberly are both board members. Brian's on the road, so his camera is off. You will have 15 minutes for question and answering. Now, I did talk to the board, Brian, like I talked to you about, the reason we allowed this application to go through is because of its population focus, because we typically don't fund homelessness services outside of HSBC, but just because of how, Karen and I had this conversation last year as well, how you focus on people exiting the jail, that's why we thought that this was a fit for our safety and justice piece. So they are aware of that, but I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and then we will get started with Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. I am Molly Bowers. I am the executive director of Focus Reentry. I've been there for about 5 years now, and we are a nonprofit jail reentry program that our office is in Boulder, but we do all of Boulder County and service people primarily leaving the Boulder County jail, and then occasionally the two halfway houses, BCTC and LCTC as well.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to go ahead and if we get done with questions before the 50 minutes are up, Molly, we'll turn it over to you and you can share whatever you want to share. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. I'm starting it now. Does the board have any questions for Molly?
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much for being here and for the work that you all do. I wanted to ask a little bit about, so this one-stop shop around housing is a relatively new program for you all. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of what led you to creating this program, in addition, because I think previously, I moved to Longmont in I think 2016, and I know that we had learned about Focus Reentry through the mentorship program. And so I'm kind of curious what led you to this expansion and how it's going. You're about 2.5, 3 years in.
Yeah. So, primarily what led to the expansion, I always quote Lonnie, our program director. In 2019, we had a conversation and she said, if someone doesn't have stable housing, how can I help them with successful reentry? So from there, we joined with One Home and became a member of the MDHI COC and started to get training in running the ISPDATs and assessing people for housing programs. And to say that it really took off, I think would be quite an understatement. We sit in all of the case conferencing now. So whether that's the local, the One Home, the youth case conferencing, and the veterans, and it's become now literally our primary program. And with that focus on obviously people with the justice involved background. We found from there that we would even run into people, we would get referrals from people that we may not have run into in the jail, but other agencies were struggling because of background, and they would ask us to work with the person and help them find housing. So it has gone from being kind of our startup secondary program to, at this point, I don't know, you can kind of see from the budget, our main program. And we are also, though it's separated out, and I tried to make the budget as clear as I could, we were also through the city of Boulder and the One Stop Shop awarded the building home program. So we are now beginning to merge the concepts of the two. So the building home program is peer support for people that have been placed into housing, right? So it goes back to what we've always done, mentoring and taking peers and working with people that have been placed in permanent supportive housing.
So that's a great question, Molly, because it's an interesting answer, and I'm wondering, so as focused reentry starts to evolve, building home is not necessarily a criminal justice focused program, right? I mean, I know building home, that's basically anyone experiencing homeless, whether they have criminal justice involvement or not. Is there a concern? I mean, is there a concern of just kind of moving away from that, when focused reentry first started, and becoming more of that, housing program, or is there still a commitment to that the original mission of focused reentry?
At this point, there is a firm commitment to the original mission because, like I was saying, we tend to find people, even if we don't meet them in the jail, this population, there is almost always some kind of background concern, regardless. So we are committed to the original mission. That being said, like for building home, we can't target the specific population, which is why that's kind of its own program in and of itself right now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to check on that because, yeah, I mean, I as I see you all expanding, which is great, just wanted to make sure that what the board's thought is on is it time to rethink the mission? Is it, or do we want to keep going this route, and just these are kind of more like add-on, even though I understand that looking at the budget, it's a pretty big add-on.
Yeah.
But it's still not necessarily a core part of where you all are heading. So that was the
as of right now, the strategic plan through 2024 is committed to this mission, and I don't see that changing.
Okay.
So one thing as I'm looking over the application, I think what you mentioned is other agencies struggle sometimes to help place folks in homes because of the background checks and so forth. And one of the things that you mentioned doing is really helping folks get into the lottery system, which obviously you don't control that. It is a lottery and not necessarily like, but I'm curious what you see is like, I mean, what is the value, I guess, that you add for those folks and to help them there? Is it that folks generally aren't applying because they're afraid of the background check? Is it that they don't have, they struggle to access other documentation they need to enter the lottery? I guess I'm sort of curious of where you fit in with that.
So it's both. A lot of people we work with definitely struggle with access to enter the lottery. They may not even know that the lotteries are going on. So that's a big piece of it. And then I think where we really add value is we teach people to advocate for themselves, to explain, hey, this is what happened. This is who I was on paper. This is who I am now. And I want to live here once their number gets selected, because those lotteries have, if they are selected, and we've had a fair amount of people selected, they look back 3 to 5 years at the housing at their background, and they look everywhere from criminal background to evictions, stuff like that. And so we really teach them and help them kind of be their best advocate. One of the new things that we're working on is having people with backgrounds who win these lotteries write a letter for themselves that we're going to submit along with the packet, because oftentimes they'll win the lottery and then there's a denial on the voucher because of background, and we have to go to the review hearing.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that it was like you get picked in the lottery and then you basically get to apply. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, you get picked and then there's still a background check like anything else. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Molly, so just, I always caveat these type of questions I'm about to ask here that, you know, the board looks at the program and your program outcomes and all of that kind of work, and ask questions about that. My job as staff is to look at your agency goals, your board diversity, which, by the way, I just want to commend you at 33%. That's a good number. So I appreciate the work that you are doing on the DEI level. But then I also look at your finances, and I just have some questions and some concerns. And again, I'm not a financial expert, but my reviews, you know, I kind of saw that, and so correct me if I'm wrong. Three things that I was concerned about. Even though I think one you're already working on, and again, kudos for that. One is primarily your source of your big sources of funding primarily come from governments. And that, you know, I'm just kind of wondering on how you were all thinking about diversifying funding.
So one of the things we're planning on the upcoming retreat is to get back into a fundraising campaign that's been, you know, these past few years through COVID, that's been kind of on a back burner. So that is one area. And then also new foundations. So there's a couple of foundations on there, like the Daniels Fund. That's actually a new foundation that we've reached out to. So looking to diversify that way and not just relying on the government sources.
Okay, good. And then my next question, again, in that same vein, is I saw a couple of you had a couple of losses in, is it correct, 2019 and 2021 in your net income and your total net income? I just want to check on, is there any concerns there, or was it just kind of blips, or as you are growing and expanding, this is, you know, par for the course?
Yeah, a lot of it was growth and expansion. So 2019 was our first like full year as our own nonprofit. We had just left the Colorado Nonprofit Development Center at the December of 2018. So 2019 was just our first full year. So we definitely struggled that year. And then 2021, we definitely went over budget, but we had cash from 2020 that carried over. So we did take a loss, but we had cash that carried over.
Awesome. All right. And then my last question, and again, kudos. You do have a strong reserve policy and you're growing it. What are your expectations? Like, how soon do you think you can get that where you want it to be, or plans?
You know, my hope, if I have it my way, it'll be there within 12 to 18 months will be where I want it at number wise. The policy, we've formally adopted the policy, and then we have our retreat coming up in December, and we're going to try and schedule out as we allocate those funds into reserves, because that's critical. And then, you know, like you said, then somebody can look at it and say, well, yeah, you had a loss in 2021, but you actually have this reserves policy. Exactly. So you're not at a loss, but until we have that policy in there, I can't put it in the budget. And I feel like that's or not the policy, the fund, the actual fund completed. And I feel like that's our last missing piece of getting where we need to be after leaving the Nonprofit Development Center.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Yep.
Brian, Kimberly, Caitlin, any other questions? All right, so we got, oh, go ahead.
I have, So a lot of, I mean, obviously your program here, a lot of it is around securing housing. But that's just one piece of it. I wonder if you could talk about, you know, in addition to just like the background concerns, what do you think the biggest challenge is for focused reentry in supporting these folks, particularly in stabilizing housing and reducing recidivism?
So I would say, you know, the biggest, you know, challenges that we face are those that we have no control over. You know, we work with a population that struggles a lot with mental health and recovery issues. So it's helping people stay stabilized in those areas is the biggest challenge that we have. And we do that, you know, through a combination of case management. And then also some of them we still have the mentors. It's a smaller, you know, portion of our program, but we do that with case management and mentoring, and we are, you know, looking at the right now building home as a separate program, but merging in a peer support piece to help with that.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so we have about 2 minutes left, Molly. If you want to share anything with us in those 2 minutes, and we'll turn the floor over to you.
I am actually good. I am struggling for my voice here, getting over this cold. So
okay,
yeah, so I will actually spare you all my crackly voice.
All right, thank you so much, Molly, and I hope you feel better soon.
All right, thank you guys.
All right. Pause and cancel. Our next group is here. We are moving. Oh, did we lose Brian? Maybe he's gonna come on here in a second on the computer. Yeah, maybe he'll join us on the computer here in a second. That's what he did last time, is he went off his phone and then and here he is. Let me admit him first before we admit. All right. So our next group is Immigrant Legal Center from and they are here now. Brian, can you hear us? Just want to make sure.
I wonder if he's still driving.
Oh, Alberto,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have been unable to unmute this entire time. So I think I'm good now.
Okay, no worries.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to go ahead and let Laurel, and I'm not sure who her guest is because it just says ILC. So I'm going to admit them right now. Hey, Laurel, how are you? Oh, and Belen's here too. Okay, good, good, good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am going to do some quick housekeeping, and then we're going to get started. We are doing good on time, so we're about 5 minutes early. Hope that's okay. Get you out of here sooner. So thank you for being here tonight. Just a reminder, this is a public hearing, and it is being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel, so the Longmont's YouTube channel at some point. I'm going to introduce our board members real quick. Caitlin Abbott is our board chair. Kimberly and Brian are board members. Way it's going to work is we're going to give you 15 minutes of Q&A. The board is going to ask questions about your application and your programs. And then if there is time remaining within those 15 minutes, we will turn it over to you to share whatever you'd like to share to the board. Before I start the timer there, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourselves and to the board, and then I'll start the timer. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves now? You're on mute, Laurel.
Of course. I'm Laurel Herndon, the current executive director, turning into mentor, as you can see, because I'm the one that needs to here to turn off my mute, which means there's another generation that needs to be taking over.
All right. Belen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Belen Parga Solis, and I am the Director of Client Services and the legal representative at the Immigrant Legal Center.
Awesome, great. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start the 15-minute timer. And if board members have any questions, this is the time to, we can start asking questions.
Hi, Laurel. Hi, Belen. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I am curious what you would each say the biggest challenge for your organization is going into 2023.
You want to take that,
Belen? Well, most of our challenges comes from the federal government. So they're to blame for all of our challenges. Just the back and forth currently that is being played with the DACA program, no new programs being available. The delay in processing applications is a big one. So a lot of challenges, and they're all coming from the federal government. I say that's our biggest.
So I have a question. I always caveat these questions. The board looks at programs and your clients and your program rationale, all of those, and I look at that too, but I focus my review of your application really on the agency side, on the agency level type of answers that you provide, and your financial structure and all of that kind of things. And I will always caveat that I am not a financial expert, but I can read financial spreadsheets well enough. I know I'm not by any means an accountant. So, but my first question is more at the strategic level. When I read your application and I read your, and I know there's changes going on, and I'm just wondering, Laurel and Belen, are the board, as this transition happens, as Laurel is working on her way out as executive director, what are some of the strategic goals that you all have set for yourselves in the next few years?
Well, the strategic goal is to not overwhelm Belen. She is brilliant. She is exactly who we need to have working with clients and mentoring Maria, whom we hope is going to get her accreditation from the Department of Justice any day now, although we are really worried about, DACA and what that means for our employee as far as getting accreditation. So that's putting a lot of weight, I think, on Belen. So strategically, there's so many moving parts. We are a staff of 4 and we don't do fundraising. We don't ask our board of directors to do fundraising, which makes it possible for us to have a board of directors that's based in the community instead of financial people. So I do put in a lot of time on financials, grant applications, and little by little, I'm sharing that with Belen, but not trying to overwhelm her, because her willingness to take over this organization is really important. And so I think we're learning how to streamline. So some of the things I may have done because I went to law school and they beat certain things into me in law school are just really not needed. It's more of a, attorneys impressing attorneys kind of thing. And so we look very carefully at what is unnecessary overhead, and we eliminate it, but we do it within a great margin of safety to make sure we don't get into difficulty with regulatory agencies that look after law firms. And we've never had a problem with anyone filing a complaint against us. So we know we're doing really well, particularly in the financial management part that attorney regulation is very, very concerned about.
Okay. So that's interesting that, the fundraising piece, that's always a challenge. I noticed that in the last couple of years, the agency seemed to have a little bit of very minor, but they're there, losses in income. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are for the future on that.
Well, I knew that was going to be your question because when I was looking at things today, I said, oh, Eliberto's going to ask me about why did we have a $15,000 loss? Because that is absolutely the right question. And we knew we could, so we went out on a limb on behalf of the community. We had a $35,000 line of credit backing us up in case we needed it, which we did not. And we realized that we needed to expand our legal services staff in order to provide the level of services needed for the community. And that meant hiring Norberto Orduz Hoya to be our front end person. He is a communicator and has made it possible for Maria to join legal services staff. But that was a $55,000 extra expense on an annualized basis. So, you know, we were not at all surprised that we ended up in June with a $15,000 loss because we knew we could count on our community partners to help us hang on to this invaluable employee that's making it possible for us to serve the community better and also generate more of our own earned income.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to check. And the other thing I look at as staff is I really look at board diversity. And I want to give you guys kudos. I mean, you have such a diverse board, and I appreciate that they are members of the community. Can you talk a little bit more about your board and what makes them so diverse and how you work to get them to the table?
Len, I'll be quiet and let you talk about Nora.
So I'm not 100% sure how long Nora has been on our board, but she recently became our board president. And I recently was able to connect with her over lunch with Maria, and we kind of just talked about her background. And she was just super inspiring because she's been here since she was little. She's gone through the immigration process to get her adjustment of status, her residency. She is the first person in her family who went to college. She's the person everyone in her family looks for to help them out with anything and everything. So she's just a really big inspiration on that front. She works currently for a credit union, I believe, who specifically works to get loans for people with ITINs or undocumented folks. So she's already working with the community besides, having or being the president on our board. So she's just awesome. And so she said, like I said, she just recently became our board president.
So those are my questions at the agency level. Thank you for sharing that. So I'll turn it over to the board to see if they have any other questions.
Laurel, I think I actually was trying to rack my brain whether it was maybe last year or the year before at these hearings, and you alluded to it at the beginning here of you stepping more into a mentor role, and I think that this is something that we have heard from you in the past couple of years, and I noticed in your application, and your comments that you've brought on additional staff. You haven't brought on additional attorneys specifically. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this change from the law firm model to a community center model. And
we don't want additional attorneys. We can't afford additional attorneys. There is no attorney who would work for what I'm able to work for because I'm from a traditional family. I have very progressive values, and this is my passion. The idea of having a legal center model is that we can adequately train amazing community members like Belen, who are actually better able than many attorneys to connect with community members and what they need. So we have no intention of turning back and hiring attorneys. It just is not a workable model because of the costs that would be involved.
So I guess the question, so I mean, I read the piece, and I guess I'm going a little bit deeper into detail. You know, we talk about notarios, and I read I read that piece. So as you go to the legal center model and you move away from the attorney model, does that is there any concern of the community losing faith in the immigrant legal center, or has it not mattered so far?
I don't think at all. In fact, I think there is more faith by the community. And when I say legal center, community center model, we are a law firm. There's no question about that, but we don't act as a law firm. We have 3 legal representatives. One happens to be a licensed attorney. The other 2 are accredited by the Department of Justice of the United States. Well, one is accredited, one will be as soon as the DACA squabble ends. So these are fully accredited individuals. And in fact, they're far better than many of my colleagues, because sometimes attorneys will dabble in areas that they're maybe not experts in, whereas Belen and Maria are focused only on immigration law. They've had to pass very stringent tests. And when clients come in, the clients will tell them things they won't tell me. You know, they'll be polite to me, but they'll open up to Belen and Maria, which makes it possible for, you know, to avoid pitfalls that, you know, that can happen when clients are reluctant to share something. So no, in fact, we have far more phone calls to set up appointments since we've switched to this model.
Okay, thank you. So we have about 3 minutes left. Not sure if there's any other questions. If not, then we can turn it over to Laurel and Belen and let them share whatever they want to share.
Belen, did you want to share about the Denver Foundation disappointment?
Sure. So as we work towards having Laurel be more of a mentor, I've been dabbling in grant applications myself. And I recently submitted one to the Denver Foundation. And we sadly got a call today saying that we did not get the grant, but they called personally because we were in the finalists. They just decided to focus the grant in a different area, which was more like hands-on work training. So I was a little sad about that because I worked really hard on it. I thought we were really going to get it, but you know, sometimes foundations just have a different vision, I guess, for their grantors. Can't be mad at that, but it was sad. So we were very well, I was, you know, I was happy that they actually called, because most of the times they don't call to say you didn't get it. So it was nice that they called. Upsetting that we didn't get it, but that's why we have to work a lot more recently. We've been working really hard. I mean, not just because I'm talking with you all, but in the last couple of months, year, we've been working really hard to get grants, having our organization work better with some funders in order for us to help our community more, because that's always our goal, is looking at options for our organization, but in the long run, that is going to be helping our community. So that is our goal. So it was a little sad that we didn't get it, but we got to look forward to other opportunities.
And we're finding in general, foundations are looking at eye-catching programs, and, you know, legal services aren't really eye-catching programs. And so we're having a bit of a hard time, and we really have to rely on our, you know, on our municipal partners to help us maintain some of these services. Norberto is going to be unbelievably helpful with Omni Salud, because people call us when they're undocumented, and Norberto grabs them. And, you know, so we're able to share information with the actual people that are looking, you know, for programs like that. And we desperately need to be able to hang on to him.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. Really appreciate your time and the work that you do in the community and for Longmont residents. It is appreciated.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
All right, and that is our timer, so that's perfect timing. All right, have a good night.
You too.
And we have one more agency, and we are done for our 2023 hearings. As a quick reminder, I need your scores by October 31st. Just so we could get ready for our November 10th deliberation meeting. Yeah, I got to put all that together, and we'll see if I'm hoping that we can get everything covered November 10th, Caitlin. If we need to do something else, I'll talk to you about it if that's not enough time. It usually is, but just in case, we can think of.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So we're just waiting now. They just emailed me saying they were going to be here, so I'm assuming they're going to be here. Kirsten emailed me. So we have about 7 minutes for a quick break, and then we'll be back here. That they should get here at 6. Hey, Brian. So I emailed the agency saying that we're doing good on time, and if they wanted to hop on, but hopefully they might just wait till their 6 o'clock time, and that's fine. Oh no, here she is. So if the rest of us are ready to go, they are online.
I'm ready.
Okay, last one. I'm gonna go ahead and admit them. Hi, Emily.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Hi, Kristen. Well, thank you for being with us tonight. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping first, and then we'll get started. So, as you know, this is our Housing and Human Services Advisory Board's hearing funding for the Human Services funding. It is technically a public hearing, so it is being recorded and will be on our City of Longmont YouTube channel at some point. So the way it goes is you will have 15 minutes of Q&A from the board, and then if there's any time remaining in those 15 minutes, then we will turn it over to you to share whatever you would like to share with the board. I'm going to introduce the board first, and then I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started with questions. So I'm going to start with Caitlin Abbott. She is our board chair. Brian and Kimberly are both board members. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we will get started with questions.
Great. Well, I'm Emily Kleeman. I'm the executive director of the Reentry Initiative. And I've been with the organization since 2018. And I'll let Kristen introduce herself.
Oh. Well, we can't hear you for some reason. Not sure it's a mic issue.
Yeah.
A little bit, tiny bit.
No, I don't hear you.
Oh, there you.
Now I can hear you.
Now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, just turn it off and on. That's all you got to do. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why that happens sometimes. My name is Kristen. I am the communications and marketing manager at the Reentry Initiative, and I've been on the team for about 4 months now.
All right, great. Welcome, welcome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. And if the board has any questions, they can go ahead and start. And if not, I can start because I do have questions.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, Kristen. Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for being here tonight. One of the things that we hear from a lot of our agencies, particularly this year, is just changes related to COVID and all of that. And I assume that you are in a very similar position, that there have been changes in terms of how you provide services and or, the perhaps the demand for services. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you think your biggest challenges are right now and going into 2023.
Great question. So I would say that we've actually been pretty lucky in our transition with COVID. With the onset with COVID, we immediately pivoted to a hybrid option for our work, so that we could provide both telehealth services as well as in person. And that's actually remained in place to date. It's actually worked out good for our members, specifically the ones that are in more of the rural areas of Boulder County. We've been able to keep them engaged in services using telehealth. And then being open 3 days a week as well has just definitely been great, reconnecting with our members and our community. What we've really seen a need for is an increase in mental health and behavioral health services, specifically through our wellness center. I have been meeting with Longmont Community Treatment Center, which is the halfway house that we partner with, and Longmont Parole. And we're finding that a lot of our members are really struggled during COVID and felt really disconnected. So there was a little uptick in substance use or mental health challenges or issues that were coming out from that period. And I think that now that people are reconnecting in person, we're seeing an uptick in how many people want to re-engage in-person services, specifically around behavioral health. So that's really where our funding this year is focused, and why we are actually asking for more funding than usual, because we have gone ahead and hired on a master level social worker who's getting licensed in not only addiction counseling, but working towards her licensure in social work under my supervision. So the goal is to keep her on staff at full time, and that way she can continue to provide the services that are needed by our members.
Thank you.
So that is actually a question that I was going to ask later on, but since we talked about it now, since you brought it up now, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I read your project budget, I think you're asking for 58,000 and some. I mean, that what I wrote in my notes is you're asking the city of Longmont to pay for about 50% of that project budget. Because I think the project budget's total 89,000, something like that. And so that is typically, you know, Longmont, it's a little high for what Longmont usually covers. And just wanted to learn a little bit more about that whole project. And, you know, is the need for that because it's a higher Longmont population, or just wanted to learn a little bit more about why the big increase in the ask. And I think you started to answer that question. You hired this new person, but I'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
Correct. So we want to be able to bring in-house or continue to bring in-house services for behavioral health and mental health. What we're finding is that our members that are engaging with us through the Welcome Back Center, which is funded through our federal grant through the Latino Coalition, they are requesting and engaging better with us when they can do all of their services in one place. So we've transitioned our model to offer that to anyone that's criminally justice involved in Longmont, because that is the serving population that we have higher numbers in, specifically because of our location close to Longmont Community Treatment Center. We're finding that that's where the need is right now. So who we brought on, we need to be able to keep her on, as well as pay for operational costs and cover certain things that wouldn't be covered by Medicaid. So that's why we had a larger ask this year. But we do have in place a Medicaid contract, which is fee for service, which helps offset some of those costs, those overhead costs for us. It's not 100% reimbursable, but it's definitely gives us some leverage year to year and to keep the doors open. And we definitely don't want our members having to pay any fees or any co-pays. So really that's why we're looking to find more funding for this program. Okay.
Yeah, and that actually leads to my next question. When I look at your overall agency budget, you know, what I see is, you know, not all of your funding, but a vast majority, for example, comes through your wages grant, right?
Correct.
And I'm just wondering what the board is working on, maybe hiring a marketing person, maybe as part of the plan to really expand your funding, your revenue sources, to become more diversified.
Absolutely. That is exactly our plan. It's in our strategic plan. So that, again, we're trying to diversify, like you said, our funding mechanisms to keep programs going year to year, and not fully relying on our wages program, which actually doesn't fund any of the behavioral or mental health services that we offer. So that was really a new endeavor separate from wages, but nonetheless, a very high need at this point.
Okay. I think the only other questions and again, I don't want to take the whole time. So if Brian or Kimberly or Caitlin, you can always stop me. But I just, again, so the board looks at the programmatic piece. I look at the agency piece. But one of the things that the board prioritizes every year and has for the last few years is the diversity of the board. Right. And I just want to check in on that. Because what I saw was that you have one person of color on the board, which I think is better than you have been. But just want to check in on progress and what you guys are working on to try and continue to increase that.
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked me that question again. It's a great question. It's in our strategic plan and it's built into our staff at this point is very diverse. I am very aware that our board has not been as diverse and representative of our membership. So what we've actually done in the last 2 weeks, I've had several meetings with my board members. I have a consultant coming in the next month to work with us on board development and the evolution of our board. As well as I've actually just identified 2 community partners, both that have come from diverse background and shared lived experience with our members that we are currently courting and starting into a board position. So they actually approached us, they were ready. So we're very excited about that endeavor. And then the second part of that is I've already started talking with Kristen. We want to have an advisory board committee of our members that are alumni. And then from that committee, identify 1 or 2 individuals that would be willing to come and represent as a board member, which is definitely something going to take a couple months to probably identify a good group of individuals, but we're planning to use our peer mentoring group, which is several individuals that have been with us for varying amounts of time. And we're going to launch it there and see if we can gain some interest and kind of build on that.
Good to hear. So those are my agency level questions. Not sure if the board has any other questions around the program level. Brian?
Yeah, I have one quick question. We've seen over the last few years populations in a number of different areas changing, like food access and healthcare. Are you seeing a change in kind of the demographics of the individuals that you're serving? From what you used to see? I hope that was kind of clear.
It varies. I think that we're seeing all sorts of different needs. We're seeing some people that come in that are excluded from certain programs because of disability. They can't work. They're much older when they come out of prison. So it takes a lot more skill building to get them to catch up. So I think we see that where they kind of fall through the cracks. So we're trying as an organization to use our donations and other in-kind monies to help support those individuals. We are seeing, I've seen a lot of young men coming out with very limited job readiness skills. So we're trying to invest a lot of programming in skill building, specifically in trade skills. We're seeing that need because they, either they went into the system and out of the system during those prime years of earning or learning. So it's a lot of lift on our staff right now to help people catch up, be able to enter into jobs that actually might turn into like a career path.
And I think you just made a really good point, Emily. And just to confirm, because we just had Focus Reentry on here a little while ago. Focus Reentry primarily deals with Boulder County Jail. But my understanding is that you all tend to work more with, the Department of Corrections prisons. Is that a correct assumption?
Correct. We do serve through the wages program. We work with the Department of Corrections and we bring people in that are re-entering through Longmont or Boulder County. But then our wellness center, because of the need at Longmont Community Treatment Center, I spoke to their interim executive director just this week. And she approached me saying, can you please open up groups and treatment services for people on probation, because the wait list at the other organizations is very long. And you're right next door. So let's try to find a way to collaborate. So that's our next thing with the Wellness Center. We're launching several groups over there. We're going inside. So we are branching out now to touch and expand to people that are just criminally justice involved, which I think will help hopefully reduce people going into the DOC system.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? All right. If not, we have about 3 minutes left. So Emily and Kristen, will turn it over to you to see if whatever you want to share with the board.
I don't know if Kristen had anything.
Not at this time. I'm sorry. I'm
just
figuring out. Next year, I'll have more questions.
No worries.
No, just, yeah, I know it was a lot more than we've asked in the years prior. Obviously, I'm hopeful, but I understand that you have many organizations you have to fund. So just, know that, we are in a position that, any amount would be helpful just to continue to provide the services that we're doing. And we always have a very good financial and fundraising plan to support us moving forward.
All right. Well, if nothing else, thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate you answering our questions.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, folks, this is our last one. I just want to say I have enjoyed the conversations that we've had. We will be talking about what our thoughts on this style of doing it, of less board members. And we'll make sure that either in December or January we have that. I don't know how busy we'll be in December or if we'll have a meeting in December, but we'll make sure that we do take the time to review and assess how these nights went, because some nights were shorter and some nights were very long. So we'll take a look at that.
Eliberto, I had something. I received something today from elsewhere indicating that the state of Colorado, is number 51 in the nation for adult mental health care. And I was just like appalled. Even behind like DC being included in there. So anyway, I don't know if that is information, like if I send it to you, I think sharing it with the board, particularly as we're going into, it just was like, I knew from various like agencies and so forth that we've heard from that's a concern. I did not realize like that there was, that it was, that we were ranked so low for access to adult mental health care in the state.
It is. Go ahead, Kimberly.
I saw too. It's not just access; it's also mental. Like a state of adult mental health is, of course, I think ranked 50th or something, which is just so hard to see. And I just wonder what factors are contributing to that. It's crazy.
What I will say is, I am part of this thing called the behavioral health. There is some ARPA dollars, and of course there is also the opioid dollars that came in through that big, landmark lawsuit. So we are getting opioid dollars into Boulder County, and there is some ARPA dollars going into behavioral health work. I can't share much at this time because there's a lot of that still is in the the brainstorming phase. But I would say that there's commitment from the county and the city, because we understand that this is a huge issue. And as I learn more and I can share more with the board, I will definitely do that. But I think your point is well taken, Caitlin.
Is that the Behavioral Health Administration at the state level, or is that something?
No, we're doing it. This is at the county level. We're taking, the county got $63 million in ARPA funding. And so I think some of that will be going to this work. I mean, the county's trying to be as impactful as possible with the big amounts of, the transformative work that they want to do is quite aggressive and innovative, and there's going to be a lot of innovation and different ideas brought about around the behavioral health piece too. So, but yeah, we all know that it's a huge issue. We see it every day in the homelessness work, in the housing work, keeping people housed, you know, the mediation staff. It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you all for your time this evening. I really appreciate all the work that you all do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alberto.
Have
And
a
great
good
job
night.
wearing multiple hats tonight.
I know, right? I gotta stop the recording after you all leave and save it. All right. Thank you all.
Bye.
Yeah.